Sarah Arthur is a costume designer and a two-time Emmy nominee for Sherlock. Other projects have included A Discovery of Witches, Dracula, The Sandman, and her new series is the Peacock show, The Continental, from the World of John Wick. Sarah, in terms of the John Wick cinematic universe, there's obviously like a very specific, I feel like, an identifiable look to the costumes. So for the prequel show, I guess, how did you balance kind of, setting up maybe what will come, but also like doing something original and era appropriate for the setting of the show?
Well, Albert Hughes, our director, was extremely involved in all the looks for the Continental. It was based in the 1970s. This is our start, and the first episode was very Studio 54-esque. That was the opening sequence. So, although very extravagant. And obviously Winston Scott, who was, one of the only ones from the actual John Wick franchise, played by Colin Woodall. So he was trying to mimic a little bit of the current John Wick franchise in the costumes, using the cravats and the handkerchiefs and the pinstripe suits for his character. It was a lot, hugely influenced by Albert Hughes on all the characters. But that's where we started with the 70s.
So I love the 70s looks and stuff. And I also feel like, I guess I wanted to ask you a little about, like, to me, the show, it's like, feels like a heightened version of the 70s, I guess, at least, or you know what I mean? Like, there is some, not a fantastical element to it, but it's like slightly more surreal, or I guess, or so I guess in your research, were you kind of like, are you trying to really replicate the era to the letter, or are you kind of taking liberties because you can, because of the kind of the John Wick universe kind of allows that?
Yeah, no, we definitely stuck to the period. I mean, I had Ian Schrager's Studio 54 book, which was full of photographic references of Liza Minnelli, the Rolling Stones, Jerry Hall. I mean, you name it, they all went there, statesmen. So it was an incredible reference point, certainly for that opening sequence. And we had the Lady Godiva on the horse. We had Bianca Jagger look-alike. We did mimic a huge amount of those costumes. I also used the Alan Tannenbaum New York in the 70s, which was full of photographic reference. So we did mimic, and in fact, I managed to get lots and lots of original 1970s costumes. And we used as many as we could when only one costume was needed. But of course, as is the nature of the John Wick franchise, we had massive stunt scenes and needed many, many duplicates. So I used these original suits and dresses and waistcoats and jumpsuits, and we took patterns from, and because we had to multiply them by quite a few. So that was good fun. But yeah, we definitely stuck within the realms of the real 70s clothing and shoes and bags and accessories. And right at the beginning, we had all these henchmen, as is in the John Wick setup. And so I decided immediately to get 200 suits manufactured, 70 suits and shirts, and so that we could accommodate all of these stunts and these car drives. And so it was the prep for this was extremely important because of all the action.
When you mentioned the act, obviously, like, that opening scene and the whole show is just like, the action is unbelievable. It's like absolutely to the level I think fans of the franchise films would expect, right? I mean, it's just as like really incredible set pieces. How much is, like, knowing the physicality of the performers then, or the actor, or the stunt actors and all those things, do you have to like craft the costumes differently, knowing the amount of stress that they will have to undergo to actually perform the stunts, I guess?
Well, I think you choose the fabric carefully. I mean, the fabric in the 70s was quite stretchy, some of it, and so that helped a lot with these suits. We inserted gussets in, the crutches and under the arms at times that you couldn't really, you couldn't see. But yeah, sometimes you've got to, make allowances for harnesses and all that business, but that's normal, in any project. But yeah, we just had a multitude of duplicates.
Incredible. You mentioned Winston before, obviously, and it's like the origin story of him and the hotel, obviously the Continental. There is even a joke in the script about his cravat versus the ascot. I think that's in the first episode, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's like very recognizable for him and for fans of the movies with Ian McShane and stuff. I guess, like, how did you land on like what the proper, ascot or cravat would look like for him and like his whole look, and thinking about, I guess, how he would have dressed then versus how his dress would maybe evolve or connect to what we see in the films with Ian McShane?
Well, it was Albert. He was adamant that the Americans call what we call a cravat an ascot. There was a massive ongoing joke about this. So, and of course, Colin Woodall as Winston started his adventure in London in a high-flying business deal, and of course all of that London restaurant, that with everyone there wore original pieces because nothing needed duplicating other than his costume going forward, and so yes, we call it a cravat, the Americans call it an ascot, so it's slight confusion initially, but then it became a bit of a standing joke.
Yeah, it's like soccer and football, right? For us Americans,
I think so.
It's so silly we call it soccer, right?
And a waistcoat and a vest. That's the other one that we say differently.
Yeah, the one other character I want to ask you about too, and I guess connecting a little bit to the movies, was Sharon, played by Lance Reddick in the films, late Lance Reddick, and we see him here as a much younger character, right? And I guess did you talk, like, how did you think about connecting him to what we see in the films, or was that, since he's not as much of a major character, though he is a supporting character in this show, like, I guess, like, how did you kind of think about him and his look and referencing what we know now as the character, I guess?
Well, again, we mimicked Lance's costumes from the John Wick films. We put AO in the greys and the slightly more boring cut. Very plain, ties and shirts. So there was no flamboyance there, but just a similar color palette, really. But obviously in a 70s cut, but not as structured as some of the other suits, and the cloth wasn't as good as some of it's Cormac suits and Collins suits. So yeah, I
like that. The details of that are great. I mean, you mentioned, like, there's so many different types of characters in this show. I mean, like, different, like you said, like from the Studio 54 to the the gun runners and all these different things. I just found that, like, it's just a wealth of, and the assassins, there's so many different types. I guess, did you have, like, was there someone you were, or a character, like, what was your most, like, I guess, challenging or most fun character maybe to dress, or even if it's a smaller one, or I don't even know, like, all of the looks are so unique and great. I just was like, it feels like an embarrassment of riches. So I guess for you, what was it like to, was there a specific one that you were most challenged or had most fun with?
The twins were great fun. And actually, although it looks very simple, because they were both contortionists and they used their, they were legs and arms everywhere. So the cost, but they were so severe and straight that the costume needed to just always be straight. And so but it needed huge flexibility, and then to return to how they looked, which was very straight. So that was an interesting. I mean, we shot this series in Budapest, and interestingly enough, they have an incredible amount of original pieces there. So I did manage to get a lot of original 70s costumes. They're not for the twins, but their boots came to mind. I mean, they were earlier, but they came, we managed to get those in Budapest. But because of the extreme action, I had to manufacture some hook to hold these boots on, so that when they were kicking the boots were flying off. So it was little things like that. But then, you know, the adjudicator, Katie McGrath, you know, that was a great fun one to do. And I based her costumes on the early Terry Moogler, you know, slightly exaggerated shoulders, which may not, some would say, is slightly correct for the 70s, but edging more towards the later 70s. But I felt that she needed that stature, and then with the mask, obviously. But you know, as you just said, it was such good fun to do all of these characters and to individualize them. And a lot of the main characters wore original pieces that we copied identically. So it was really nice to have that feel of original pieces and then exact copies for these stunts. But I think, you know, we did lots of different areas of New York, Chinatown. So we made that much more brown, you know, and beiges and light. And then we had Harlem, which was huge color and lots of hats and wide legs, and you know, and it was such a massive variety of costumes.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch as well. So we have to over here, Sarah Arthur, the Continental from the World of John Wick on Peacock. Thank you so much.
Thank you.